What are a few of the scariest crimes that can happen to anyone? Let's find out. Starting with number 5, the $1,000 footlong. Letitia Bishop got the shock of her life when she ordered 3 Subway sandwiches for her family who were trying to eat fresh and thought Subway was the best way to do that. But when she looked at her receipt on the way home, she realized that the Subway outlet had charged $1,021.50 for that freshness. This included about $1,010 for just one sandwich. This was obviously a huge shock to Letitia, since one Subway sandwich usually is less than $10, and it wasn't all that long ago that $5 footlongs was a thing. But Letitia's headaches didn't end there. When she went back to the outlet to complain, she was told that she couldn't get an immediate refund and needed to actually speak to the corporate head office. Letitia soon found out this was near impossible because there was no phone number that led to a live person who could authorize her refund. To make matters worse, the Subway that overcharged her closed down right after the incident, so Letitia had nowhere to turn. She even tried to raise the issue with her bank, but since she used a debit card to process the transaction, they said it was up to the Subway to refund her. And this little back and forth game persisted up to 2 months after the transaction. In fact, Letitia said she couldn't shop for groceries because she didn't have the cash flow after this incident occurred. The strange thing about this case is how unlucky Letitia was that the Subway closed shortly after the transaction. It's also weird that the outlet didn't immediately refund her after verifying the transaction. One way to avoid incidents of fraud like this is to use a credit card, because they offer better protection. But really, the vast majority of people don't need to have their guard up anyway when they're going to Subway. Still, it's probably good practice. And the thing is, this probably was just a simple mistake, since she was seemingly the only one with a massive charge, and it was a pretty even number. You could see how a 0 may have been accidentally pressed. But then the store closes and Letitia's out of the cash. So was it bad luck? Or was something sneaky going on with an employee who was trying to run a little scam? However, in the end, Letitia got a full refund after having to deal with this 2-month headache. Number 4, the high-flying pilot. Off-duty pilot Joseph Emerson was charged with 83 counts of reckless endangerment after he tried to shut down a plane's engine. Emerson wasn't the one flying the plane, but he was in the jump seat, an extra seat in the cockpit usually for crew, so he had an easy access to the engine switch. Thankfully, the other pilots in the cockpit caught on and restrained him before he could do any more damage and crash the plane. So why would Emerson even do something so strange? Well, it turns out our dear pilot thought he was actually dreaming and believed that the best way to wake up from his dream was to crash the plane, Inception style. So why would Emerson even believe he was dreaming in the first place? Well, it turns out that 2 days before the incident, Emerson had gone on a bender and basically ate magic mushrooms that made him fly like a rocket ship. He had taken them at an event that was thrown in honor of his friend who passed away, and his friends thought the best way to celebrate their friend was to take the chemical highway to space. As it turns out, when you take that sort of a trip, it can be very difficult to get back to reality. So when Emerson resumed work, he believed he was in some alternate reality. But things didn't get really interesting until he got into that plane. Emerson suddenly couldn't understand the onboarding protocols and felt nothing made sense. He got even more triggered when a text message played in his ears through a spoken text-to-audio message, and he thought that he was surely in a dream. So he did the smart thing. He pulled on the emergency engine switch lever to stop the plane and maybe wake up, which was going to have the opposite effect. Thankfully, Emerson was stopped and then booted out of the cockpit, but that didn't stop Emerson's nightmare. He saw that the passengers weren't frightened after he literally just tried to crash the plane, so he thought that was sure evidence he was in a dream. So when the plane had an emergency landing, he made sure to pee on himself, take off all his clothes, and then try to play Toy Story with his Woody, if you know what we mean. Yeah, just really weird things. And through all this, he kept questioning the cops if he was alive. Emerson was hit with 83 charges, one for each passenger and crew member he tried to end on the flight. Number 3, Mexican cartel timeshares. A couple was scammed out of almost $1 million by an elaborate timeshare fraud perpetrated out of Mexico by Jalisco New Generation Gang. And they're not the only ones. According to the New York Times, Times and FBI, this sort of scam has stolen at least $200 million from Americans in the last 5 years alone, and that number is only growing. These scams are usually pretty successful because the cartel has employed a lot of manpower and energy into running an efficient defrauding operation. In fact, there are multiple call centers staffed with employees who are tasked with calling up victims pretending to be timeshare sale brokers. These call center operatives tell their victims that someone wants to purchase their timeshare for a really large amount, and then reel their victims in by promising to broker the deal. However, for the deal to be brokered, they ask for certain frivolous fees to be paid upfront first. Since the victims believed that these calls were legitimate, they wire transferred the payments to Mexico and never got anything in return. The lucky ones did quickly realize that they were getting scammed and stopped sending the payments, while others got so reeled in that they sent hundreds of thousands of dollars more, hoping to recover something. And as they sent more payments, the web of lies they got tangled in got even more complicated. The couple that paid out nearly $1 million, for example, was told that the agent brokering their deal had broken Mexican law and was now in jail. His supposed employees that sent him a text to the victims claiming that they had to pay over $150,000 in fines to get him out. Sadly, the victim was actually thinking of taking out another mortgage to settle that bill. Luckily, his wife and family intervened and got him to drop the idea. The incredible thing about this scam is that many timeshare companies in Mexico are in cahoots with the cartels. According to the New York Times, Vendetta Group, one of the biggest timeshare resort companies in Mexico, has ties with the cartel, and many of its clients have had their details leaked to the cartel. The U.S. government is basically powerless to stop them, as an investigation requires full cooperation from local authorities, which is difficult to get. To make things worse, American firms can't sue these timeshare resorts that may be culpable in leaking the information of their clients to cartels, because they would also need a lawyer licensed in Mexico to begin the process. And who knows how difficult that would be. So these cartels are basically having the time of their lives swindling Americans out of their hard-earned money, and there's almost nothing anyone can do about it. And we thought timeshares were bad enough scams as it was. Number 2, artificial scams. An Australian man lost his entire life savings to a crypto scam that promised he would become a millionaire. Gary Meechan was told that just one investment in the scheme would make him set for life. He found about the scheme on Facebook and bought into it because of a doctored video of Elon Musk and Piers Morgan endorsing the investment. In the video, Elon was speaking to Sunrise host Natalie Barr, Today host Carl Stavanovich, and ex-Prime Minister Julia Gillard, as well as commentator Piers Morgan. Gary was convinced by the video to invest, as he was a longtime admirer of Musk and believed that the video was real. He was then told by the scammers that he was one of 45 lucky people who had been given the opportunity to invest. So, lucky him. 71-year-old Gary jumped at this opportunity and gave the scammers his card details to help him make the purchase. But each time he tried to withdraw money from the scheme, he was persuaded to invest just a bit more to increase his eventual bumper profit. So Gary continued to invest and invest until he invested himself a hole in the ground and was left with nothing. It was when he finally realized he had nothing left that he had fallen for a really sophisticated scam, one of many people who had fallen for the same AI-generated video trick. By the time the scam was over, Gary had invested about $411,000. This was a pretty sad case too, because Gary is a senior who can't just go back to work to earn some money. Now he has no choice but to fall back on his pension. Experts believe that these scammers are targeting more seniors and are employing more sophisticated tools like AI to get even more victims. The fact is that these scammers will only get more sophisticated in time, and the best way to avoid such traps is to always do careful due diligence for any sort of investment. And remember, if there's a celebrity endorser, even if it's not a scam, it's probably a sure sign that whatever they're selling is junk. Run for the hills. Be sure to stay right here to find out how dumb this guy was to tip off police to his crimes. Number 1, vacation scams. Henry Williams, a British war hero, went on vacation in Rio de Janeiro, and he was unfortunately scammed out of roughly £20,000. The scam was so backbreaking that Williams had to sell his treasured war medals to help with his bills after losing money to the scammers. Williams complained about the bank to his local financial ombudsman, which is a government employee who investigates and tries to resolve complaints against companies. However, he was able to only get his bank to refund just half of the money stolen from him. him. His bank, Barclays, told him that that was all they could do. However, Williams disagreed, saying that he should be refunded because the scam wasn't his fault, but the fault of the bank's faulty security infrastructure. According to banking policy, victims of financial fraud aren't entitled to a refund if they had acted out of gross negligence or were attempting to defraud the bank, neither of which Williams feels he did. However, Barclays' argument was that Williams had acted with gross negligence, and it was basically his fault that he had been scammed, and their evidence is somewhat convincing as well. Months before the scam happened, Williams had also been scammed of about 2,000 euros in Madrid by a bar that told him that his bill was just 300 euros. Williams paid the bill, but later discovered in his hotel room that he had actually been charged 2,000 pounds. According to Barclays, this was evidence enough that Williams was indeed susceptible to these sorts of crimes, and as such, this crime must also be his fault. The financial ombudsman who looked into Williams' case first decided that Barclays didn't need to offer a refund and that there was some gross negligence. However, after Williams appealed the case, the ombudsman admitted that he might have truly been scammed. Apparently, some of the transactions that took place on his card happened within seconds on different terminals, something Williams claims is physically impossible. However, Barclays insisted that the transactions were validly authenticated by Williams because they happened sometimes 20 minutes after Williams authenticated an undisputed transaction. So after about 2 years of appealing, Barclays was eventually ordered to return about half of the stolen money plus interest to Williams. However, they didn't budge on their claim that Williams had been careless with his card, PIN, and payment habits. In fact, they shared evidence with the ombudsman that they say proved that their claims were correct. Sadly for Barclays, the ombudsman still found that they had been culpable in at least half of the disputed transactions. But the question remains, how could Williams have been scammed if he weren't grossly negligent? Well, there are loads of different ways criminals can steal from you using your card. For one, they can make use of a hacked terminal display to make you pay for a wrong bill. You could think you're only paying $20 for a drink and then later realize that you had actually authenticated an $800 charge because the terminal lied to you. There are also attacks where scammers use compromised terminals to harvest the authentication codes of valid users and then use those codes to authenticate a series of pre-planned transactions on the terminal. Since hackers usually can't steal a lump sum at once due to bank flagging issues, they usually queue up a bunch of similar transactions that look valid in order to stop the banks from flagging them. When this sort of fraud is done at a club, the scammers try to slip something extra to their victims to stop them from moving to another club and therefore disrupting their queue of illegal transactions. There are also other sorts of scams where criminals just secretly record the PINs of their victims and then steal their card and use them to validate fraudulent transactions. And other scams are even more complicated and involve using a special chip to fool the terminal into thinking the transaction doesn't require a PIN and only requires the card's chip. What are all the things that could go wrong when people use social media? Let's get started with number 7. Thanks for all the proof. Levi Watson was talked to by the police about his possible role as a contraband dealer in a gang. Of course, Watson said he had no connection to the gang and claimed to be flat broke. Broke as a joke. Then, like the criminal mastermind he is, he posted pictures on social media that would make Tony Montana blush, completely contradicting his broke claim. Every brag was like a breadcrumb leading the authorities straight to his illicit empire. Because if you're going to break the law and lie to the police, you should always post it on social media. If you don't, how are people going to know how awesome you are? And how will they even know about your criminal empire? The police had a front row seat to Watson's ostentatious displays, gathering all the evidence they needed from his social media accounts. Watson's fatal flaw, aside from brain power, was his need for the limelight. Watson uploaded posts of himself with Rolexes, one post with a white Ferrari like he was making a calendar or something, and another post where he was literally bathing himself in money. The tub was filled with 20-pound notes, which is still a lot of money, but it's a bit underwhelming too. If you're bragging about how excessively wealthy you are, shouldn't it have 100-pound notes? Just saying. Also, that money was probably filthy, so there's that. Other brags included some watches on the gear stick of a Porsche Panamera with the caption asking you, personally, have seen 100,000. Politely, Watson says that if you hadn't, then it looks like that. Now you've seen it, thanks to Watson, and you can go about your day with your brain a bit fuller. Another picture showed Jamaican $1,000 bills and a gold watch with the caption, "When you're sitting on over $250,000, but you tell them it's pennies." That way, if police weren't sure if Watson was lying about being flat broke, he let them know he was. The police were like, "Wait, you mean those bills aren't pennies?" They were probably so confused. Watson also seemed to be unsure about what's a chair and what's not. Sitting on watches will break them, Levi. They're not chairs. The pictures became evidence of his shady dealings, basically doing all the police work that needed to be done. How was Watson possibly going to explain his posts while being flat broke? But instead of showing any sort of remorse, Watson bragged about his imminent prison sentence. Obviously, everyone thinks going to prison is cool, so why not brag about it? Watson also bragged about his notorious achievements in the contraband trade, painting himself as a larger-than-life anti-hero. His unapologetic demeanor fueled public outrage, making him both a target of scorn and a symbol of audacity in the face of justice. Watson, in a brazen move, released a song that glorified his criminal exploits. He also released a video for it that appears to follow all COVID safety protocols, because following all COVID safety protocols is pretty gangsta. Of course, he tried to have a music career. This guy is as dumb as he is cliche. The provocative tracks sparked heated debates, with critics questioning the morality of profiting from illegal activities. Apparently, these critics have never listened to a hip-hop track, if that's what they're stuck on. Ultimately, the authorities made significant progress in dismantling the contraband ring, leading to the arrest of 12 other individuals involved in the operation. Levi Watson was just one among the many apprehended, facing severe consequences for his role. Watson received a 7-year prison sentence, then bragged about that on social media as well. In another post, next to a picture of rapper Bobby Shmurda, Watson says that they gave him Shmurda years. So he smiled at the judge when he said 7. Shmurda was handed 7 years in prison for his crimes a few years back. Man, that judge was probably so embarrassed that Levi smiled at him when he got his sentence. So when Watson was sent to his prison cell, the judge probably drove home to his big house and felt so mad and humiliated. He probably looked at himself in the mirror and said something like, "Well, you won this round, Watson. You really showed me," and then slouched in his leather recliner and watched his big screen TV, wishing he had it all figured out like the guy he just sent to prison does. Number 6. Crashing for YouTube. Christopher and Kimberly Phelps from Yucaipa, California, are in hot water for their outrageous antics. These two brains are accused of causing car crashes on purpose, all in the name of scoring fraudulent insurance payouts. But here's where we learn what brain power truly is. The two had a YouTube channel called Blue3Go57, where over 160 videos were posted showcasing their intentional crashes. We're talking heart-stopping collisions, near misses, and hair-raising road rage incidents. These videos became a digital fingerprint of their deliberate actions. The San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department caught wind of the YouTube channel and teamed up with the California Department of Insurance to bring them to justice. It was a high-stakes investigation involving search warrants, countless hours of video analysis, and even social media investigation to track down more victims. That said, the investigation was probably set on easy mode, since the best place to hide video evidence of crimes is on YouTube. If it wasn't for their idiotic desire for fame, the Phelpses might have gotten away with it, but they just had to be YouTube stars, flaunting their crimes for all to see. And if their wild antics weren't enough, the Phelps couple also faced charges of child endangerment. They had their own innocent kid in the car during some of their reckless stunts, because it's always best to have a kid in the car when you're intentionally getting in accidents. How could that possibly go wrong, you know? Christopher had already been nabbed once before for similar charges. You'd think he would have learned his lesson, but nope. Now he and his partner in crime, Kimberly, are looking at a bunch of charges. It looks like the Phelpses ultimately got the fame they wanted and a free stay in a bigger house. Parents of the Year awards are likely on the way. Number 5. The Showoff Gang. Salvador and Ivan Ramirez, brothers from Long Beach, California, orchestrated a series of heists that had law enforcement on their toes. The duo, along with their gang, went on a crime spree that left a trail of disbelief. Accused of running a criminal empire, the Ramirez brothers faced an impressive number of charges. Over 100 crimes are attributed to their name. Ma and Pa Ramirez are probably so proud. The brothers struck fear into the hearts of the Indian community, renowned for their opulent gold jewelry worn during traditional rituals and cultural festivals. What made the Ramirez brothers true masters of their craft was their ability to vanish without a trace. Like ghosts, they left no DNA or fingerprints behind, always one step ahead of the law. Their planning and attention to detail meant that not a shred of evidence remained at the crime scenes. But while their crimes remained hidden, the Ramirez brothers couldn't resist the urge to brag online. They took to social media, flaunting their ill-gotten gains for the world to see. They posted pictures of exquisite watches, gleaming gold bars, and stacks of cash that would make anyone's heart skip a beat. Little did they know, these pictures would serve as their downfall, leading the authorities straight to their doorstep. The Ramirez brothers were as meticulous as they were brain dead. They scoured the internet for information, identifying families with common Indian surnames as potential targets. Their use of disposable mobile phones ensured their anonymity, while their elegant attire and luxury vehicles allowed them to blend seamlessly into the background. And their reign of crime knew no boundaries. They ventured far and wide, crisscrossing California and even leaving their mark in the neighboring state of Nevada. All in all, the burglary gang stole over $1 million in gold jewelry and were said to have been committing 2 burglaries a week before getting caught. It seems like a whole lot of work to just tell on yourself on social media, doesn't it? Number 4, shining light. Kevin Gaines Jr. was apprehended by Florida deputies after a chase that played out live on Instagram. The fugitive had been on the run for weeks, wanted on a string of charges, including a carjacking. A deputy had seen the car Gaines was believed to be driving at a residence in DeLand, Florida. As they closed in on their target, Gaines started live streaming his every move on Instagram because, hey, anything for views, right? The internet would totally think he was cool for the entire length of his stream, and then it would immediately forget it. Despite knowing Gaines' location, officers still had to move cautiously as Gaines was known to carry weapons and was said to be dangerous. Knowing his precise location inside the house could help keep everyone safe, but how could officers know where he was? As Gaines continued his live stream, the deputies shined a powerful spotlight through a window, and there was the light captured in the background of the live stream. Now deputies knew exactly where he was. Undeterred by the presence of friends and relatives who tried to protect Gaines, the police stormed the house, ready to bring the chase to an end. Gaines' friends attempted to deceive the officers, claiming he wasn't inside, and one woman even went so far as to bet $100 that Gaines wasn't there. Like the cop was going to say, "Oh, you're on," or, "Oh, wow, he must not really be here if she's willing to put money down on it. Yeah, we should go." Eventually, Gaines emerged from the house, and the deputies wasted no time in arresting him. Gaines had a history of run-ins with the law, such as having been arrested for carjacking. Well, he faced additional charges, which included grand theft auto, resisting a law enforcement officer, and fleeing law enforcement. Number 3, Lance Armstronging. Andy Airy was a cyclist from Bristol in the UK. Airy's life took a jolting detour during his daily commute in 2015 when he was knocked off his bike. The driver quickly admitted fault, leaving the insurance company QBE to cover the damages. But as the wheels of suspicion began to turn, QBE engaged the services of the formidable law firm Berrymans, Lace and Maurer, confusingly known as BLM. QBE wanted to dig deeper into Airy's claims, particularly focusing on his alleged knee injury. The fraud intelligence team at BLM delved into Airy's social media presence and uncovered a series of posts both before and after the accident. Astonishingly, just before undergoing a medical examination to support his claim in March 2016, Airy shared Strava activities showcasing his running, cycling, and even participation in triathlons. The most damning evidence was a recorded bike ride on the very day of his medical examination. You're probably thinking, wow, all of that on a bum knee. Impressive. Why is this hero in trouble? Sorry, Airy has played you for the fool as well. His knee injury was fake. For those unfamiliar, Strava is a popular fitness tracking app used by athletes and fitness enthusiasts to record their activities, including running, cycling, and swimming. Users can share their accomplishments and progress with the Strava community. When confronted with this undeniable proof, Airy's own medical expert acknowledged that the road traffic collision couldn't have caused his alleged knee injury. He said it was more likely due to a pre-existing degenerative condition, probably the same one found in his brain. Realizing the weight of the evidence against him, Airy withdrew his claim for damage. However, BLM continued to pursue Airy, leading to a trial in Bristol County Court. The judge ruled that Airy's intention was to associate his knee injury with the 2015 collision, labeling his actions as fundamentally dishonest. Consequently, Airy was ordered to pay the defendant's costs, amounting to around £40,000. The impact of this case extended beyond his personal penalty. QBE, the insurer, managed to save approximately £145,000 in damages and legal expenses. So thank heavens for that. We're sure they passed those savings right on to the consumer. Number 2, caught in a snap. In an incredibly stupid sequence of events, Christopher Wallace And no, not that Christopher Wallace, sealed his own fate with a series of major blunders that led the police straight to him. With a manhunt underway, the Somerset County Sheriff's Office was determined to track down Wallace, who was wanted in connection with the burglary. Wallace, in a move that can only be described as dumb, decided to broadcast his location to the world through Snapchat. First, he posted a Snapchat message proudly announcing his return to his home in Fairfield, Maine, while being aware of the search, because he's dumb. That post, unsurprisingly, didn't go unnoticed. Quick-thinking citizens who spotted Wallace's announcement wasted no time in tipping off authorities. So, the officers stormed Wallace's residence, and as they searched the premises, a new Snapchat message came in. It was Wallace, being slick now that the police were in the same house as he was, posting that he was heading to a different location to throw police off so he could make another escape. Just kidding, he actually revealed his hiding spot in the post, which was in a cabinet in the kitchen. The cops, already actively searching the house, found him by his feet, which were sticking out of one of the cabinets. So Christopher got himself arrested, which seems like it was going to be inevitable. Christopher's friend, Erica Hall, was also arrested for telling police she hadn't seen him in weeks while he was hiding in the kitchen behind her. Number 1. Fairy tale fraud. Amanda Zeminski was a nurse at South Shore Physicians in Staten Island. During her tenure at the medical practice, Zeminski hatched an ingenious plan to amass a fortune. Exploiting her access to personal information, Zeminski stole patients' identities, targeting the vulnerable and unsuspecting elderly. Amanda teamed up with her boyfriend, Clyde C-Money CEO Forteau, a name likely given to him by another CEO of a Fortune 500 company, we're sure. And together, they embarked on a daring spree of extravagant spending. Imagine a life filled with lavish jewelry, courtside seats at electrifying sports events, and even a romantic rendezvous in the magical realm of Disney World. They were living the dream afforded to them by the hard work of identity theft. Facebook became their personal gallery of opulence. C-Money CEO Forteau proudly boasted about his proximity to Jay-Z during a Jets game and his position in front of the late Aaron Hernandez, the infamous former New England Patriot tight end, at Game 6 of the NBA semifinals. Zeminski also proudly displayed her dazzling engagement ring, a symbol of their love and their love of identity theft, given to her at the enchanting Cinderella's castle. Their escapades eventually got the attention of law enforcement. In a turn of events, investigators uncovered a trail of evidence connecting Zeminski and Forteau to their scheme, all from their social media bragging. Surprise, surprise. Their victims, the unsuspecting elderly people, had their lives turned upside down. Their bank accounts were emptied, fraudulent credit cards were opened in their names, and even their tax refunds were stolen through bogus income tax returns. The duo's ill-gotten gains amounted to $675,000. As fate would have it, Zeminski's reign of deception met a sudden end when she was unceremoniously terminated from her job for lying about how many hours she worked. The truth began unraveling, and the police closed on the couple's extravagant facade. Forteau's sleek BMW 7 Series that he worked so hard to steal through fraud became a treasure trove of incriminating evidence. Police seized over 50 credit cards and a cache of stolen and forged driver's licenses. During the investigation, the police also seized a collection of Rolex watches adorned with dazzling jewels, a money clip engraved with Forteau's nickname, as well as patient files and a substantial amount of cash. Facing the consequences of their crimes, Zeminski, Forteau, and their cohorts are on trial. Charges including identity theft, enterprise corruption, and a litany of other criminal counts hang over their heads. If convicted, they could be looking at a substantial prison sentence, fitting end to their once glamorous lives of crime and ill-gotten opulence. Hey, at least Forteau is still a CEO, right? Click to watch one of these next videos. Let us know in the comments section what you'd rather have: free groceries for life or free gas for life.